Today, we're taking a trip back to Edwardian England. You know, a world of unimaginable wealth and super strict social rules. But we're not going to hang out with the lords and ladies upstairs. Nope. We're going downstairs into the life of one young servant girl who is about to risk absolutely everything for an idea. Okay, so picture this. It's 1906. It's just before dawn on a summer morning. You're 16 years old. Your name is Alice Sutton, and you've just started your first real job at this huge, grand estate called Roxton Abbey. But you're not really thinking about your chores, are you? No. Your mind is racing because tonight you have a secret plan. A plan that could get you fired and worse, blacklisted, so you can never get a job like this again.
So to really get what Alice is risking here, we have to understand the world she lived in. It was a place totally defined by this rigid system that separated the people who were served from the people who did the serving. You've probably heard of it, the world of upstairs, downstairs.
It is honestly hard to wrap your head around just how massive domestic service was back then. Alice had just joined the single biggest workforce for women in the entire country. But she was right at the bottom of the ladder. As an under-housemaid, her life was just this relentless cycle of scrubbing floors, sweeping out fireplaces, and answering to a whole line of bosses, all the way up to the terrifying housekeeper, Mrs. Fletcher.
And on this day of all days, the pressure is through the roof. Her employers, the Ashby Blythes, are hosting royalty. We're talking the king's own brother is coming for dinner. The whole estate is just buzzing with this nervous energy. And all the while, Alice is guarding this little secret tucked away in her pocket, a simple stick of chalk.
So, what did a day in this world actually feel like? Well, it was a life of painstaking and, let's be honest, mostly invisible labor that kept these massive estates running like perfect, well-oiled machines.
And this quote from Alice, it just hits the nail on the head. The work wasn't just brutal. It was often, well, completely absurd. For instance, her entire afternoon is going to be spent washing a giant mosaic floor, tile by individual tile, with milk. Yeah, with milk, just to get the perfect shine for the guests.
And get this, Alice was just one of more than 1 million women in England working in domestic service. Think about that, a massive hidden army that literally powered the wealthiest homes in the nation.
This chart really puts it into perspective. Just look at that slice. Nearly a third of all working women were servants. So this wasn't just a job. For so many, it was the foundation of the female economy. It was a world all its own.
Which brings us to the big question, right? Why would a 16-year-old girl who's frankly lucky to even have this job risk throwing it all away? What was this rebellion really all about?
Well, for one thing, she wasn't alone. Alice had quickly become friends with Louisa, another under-housemaid, and they were in this together. And not just because they scrubbed the same floors. They were connected by a powerful shared belief. See, they'd met a few months earlier at a meeting for the Women's Social and Political Union, the group right at the center of the fight for the women's vote.
And you can see on this timeline just why they were so fed up. Women had been fighting for this for decades. There was this little spark of hope with the new Liberal government, but then, poof, it was gone. They put the issue off again. For women like Alice and Louisa, patience had totally run out. The time for asking nicely was over. The new motto was deeds, not words. It was a call for direct, disruptive action.
And that right there is the perfect storm. You've got the king's brother visiting the abbey, you've got her boss, Sir John, who is a known political critic but has been annoyingly silent about votes for women. So with this high-profile audience, literally under her roof, what on earth was Alice planning to do with that piece of chalk?
Finally, the dinner bell rings. By now, Alice has been on her feet for over 12 hours straight. She is exhausted. But as the guests sit down to their lavish meal, she knows it's now or never. It's time.
So here's how it all goes down. Alice and Louisa sneak out and race over to the local church. Alice whips out her chalk and writes "Votes for Women" in huge letters right across the wall. Louisa starts scattering pamphlets, but then someone steps out of the shadows, and it's Roberta, their nosy roommate. You think it's all over, right? But instead of raising the alarm, she picks up a rock and hurls it right through a stained glass window.
Now you have to understand, this wasn't just kids breaking stuff for fun. This was a calculated political protest, a perfect example of deeds, not words. They knew that when Sir John brought his royal guest to church the next morning, he would see their message. And with a prince there, this small act of rebellion in a sleepy little village could blow up into a national news story.
The three girls tear back to the abbey just in time to help clear away the dinner plates.
Alice collapses into bed that night, exhausted but totally buzzing with adrenaline. She has no idea that the little cracks they just made were part of a much bigger earthquake that was about to shake the very foundations of her world.
See, the First World War was just around the corner, and it was going to change everything. It would pull women like Alice out of houses like this and into factories and offices. At the exact same time, rising taxes and falling incomes meant the aristocracy just couldn't afford to keep these huge estates going. The entire system that Roxton Abbey stood for was starting to crumble.
And what about their fight? Well, it was far from over. In 1918, some women over 30 finally got the right to vote. But it would take another full decade, all the way to 1928, before women finally got to vote on the same terms as men. It was a long, hard-won victory.
And that really brings us to the heart of it all. Alice's story is a powerful reminder that the incredible, magnificent world of estates like Roxton Abbey, all of its beauty, its elegance, its power, was built on a system of profound inequality. Its grandeur literally depended on the hidden, tireless, and invisible work of over 1 million women who were determined that one day they would be seen and they would be heard.